Okay, Chevra, here we go. We are in the sugya of Moshiach, when sometimes that magic word, which is not yes, which is no, that we don't always like to hear, but sometimes we have to hear it. And that's the voice that when we're not going on the straight and narrow path, sometimes we need someone to guide us. And really the people that are the best friends of yours are not the yes men. They're the ones that will be able to say to you, I think you need to move a little bit this way, a little bit this way. They're actually the ones that really care about you and that really want to help you. So we mentioned yesterday that Moshiach will be the one that will be the master at giving that positive moral guidance. And we said if it's not given in the right way, what will happen? It's like a poopy diaper that's getting poked at, and all of a sudden nothing smelled before, but as soon as you smell, ooh, you move the garbage can and everything smells not so pleasant. And we said that's the one who doesn't have the right voice of rebuke. He's not fitting to give that voice of moral, corrected guidance, and therefore he has to be careful. But really giving this teichacha is a tremendous thing. So we started inside Rabbi Nachman in Tinyana, in the second volume in Ches. And we're going to go back inside. And we mentioned that the second part of the introduction, which is that reviewing that souls, all the souls of humanity, especially Klal Yisrael, are deeply rooted in the smell. The smell is that scent that was never made contaminated in Gan Eden. It's a pure smell, and my neshama, which is so pure, gets its energy from the power of scent. And therefore we have to be very, very careful not to give negative rebuke to somebody and stir up all that stinky, all those things that he did, and stir up all those bad ideas. So let's look back inside. Start from Menayin Shemevarchen al Areach. How do we know that we make a bracha in general on smell? Shenemar Kol HaNeshama Tehalel Ka. Because the last verse in Tehillim says, Kol HaNeshama, every single neshama praises Hashem, the end of King David's Psalms. And the Gemara says in Brachos Mem Gimel on the Beis, Eze Davar ShaNeshama Nenes Memenu. What is the thing that the neshama gets pleasure from? V'loy haguf, and the body doesn't get such a pleasure from this. It's something that's so reserved for the soul. Heavy oimer ze'areach, smell. Al kain al yedei zeh hamaychiach shu mavish reicham. And therefore, God forbid, somebody who's not fitting to give moral guidance, and he starts just poking around and he says, bro, I saw you do that thing, and I saw you do that thing, and you weren't so nice to that person, and you didn't wake up early, and he just starts poking around at all your misdeeds. He's just making all the sludge inside of you, he's stirring it all up. Like you've got a glass of water, and all of the sediment and all of the earth, let's say you took it from the bottom of the lake, and it was murky, but then everything settled to the bottom. So you look at the glass of water and it looks very nice. And all of a sudden someone comes along and just starts shaking up, it starts poking around at the bottom of the glass, and all of a sudden it stirs up all the muck and all the goop. And therefore that makes this bad smell. And if the neshama gets its life force from the smell, then you're cutting off that person's life force. God forbid. Ali dezen nechleshes haneshama. So the neshama gets weakened. Sheni yinikosem me'areach. Because the neshama gets its power from the smell. Umemela nifsak hashefa mikol ha'olamas hatluyim behem. In my version of Reb Nachman, it started the next column. And all the neshamas that are dependent on its person also gets spliced. However, aval, a big aval. However, what's the corollary, my friends? Kisha ha'moichiach roi lahoichiach. When the person who's giving that moral guidance and rebuke is fitting, he's a tzaddik, he's holding at that level himself. As an Adarabba. What's Adarabba? The exact opposite, which is interesting. Adarabba has the lashon of Adar. Because in Adar, which is Purim, everything flips upside down. Adarabba. You thought Haman was going to win the whole Adarabba. Adar. The whole thing. Haman gets hung on the same gallows that he made for Mordechai. Adarabba. Adar. Adar is Adar Ba. That Adar, the month of Adar is in it. Is Ba. Is Mamish in the whole thing. That's Adarabba. V'nahapachu. Which is the whole secret of Moshiach and the time to come. Not for now. Because a person is fitting to give teichacha, when he comes and he says, Rabbi Yid, maybe we can talk about something that's happening in your life. And nowadays, you got to take the guy out for a Wagyu steak dinner first, a fancy bottle of Cabernet Sauvignon, all the trimmings, all the fixings. And then at the end of it, when he's all wined and dined, he said, "So I saw when you were doing, in the fields of Pain at Mincha, that you went on your bare hand and you didn't go on the, and maybe for the well-being of all the spiritual worlds, be careful to go over your sleeve, which by the way is a thing. Some guys are wearing short sleeves, so they pull this one. They're like, you can pull that. It's also a move to not go right on the skin." But the person who's a tzaddik, he's able to get that message through. And not only by doing that does he not stir up a bad stench in the person, he actually brings out the greatest scent. He pulls out the most beautiful fragrance of the soul. Because does the soul, my friends, want to be doing Averas? What does the soul want? It's mamish. All the soul wants, all your soul wants is to do mitzvahs. Just mitzvahs. That's all it wants. It wants to be dovuk. It wants to just cleave to Hashem. Shivti beveis Hashem kol yimei chayai. Achas shoalti meis Hashem oisa avokesh. I just want you, Hashem. There's nothing else. I just want you. Samalach al nafshi. I'm thirsty for you, Hashem. I just want you. It's the goof. It's the body. It's the instincts. The animalistic side of me that's just running on the instincts, that wants everything else, that just wants immediate pleasures, immediate gratification, that never ends up well. I was speaking to some of the guys who just went to Tel Aviv, not to the good parts, and they said that I was there for a few minutes, and it looks so good on the outside, it's kef, it's fun, it looks, woo, it's great. And you scratch you peel back one micro layer of what's going on, and they all said the same thing. They said it was so depressing. There was so much anxiety. The people, they're not happy. One micro layer. The surface, beautiful, gorgeous, everyone looks good, gains, beaches, it's beautiful. Of course there's good things there as well. But some of the general external part, you peel back one layer, where's it going? How many people are really happy? I mean, in that scene, in that party scene there, they said it feels so empty. We felt it. We were already thirsty to come back to Yerushalayim to learn Torah. We miss it. We need it. We mamish need it. We're thirsty. You go into the desert and you realize you're not so thirsty when you're in, you're basking in the oasis. But as soon as you go into the desert, I'm parched. I need to come home. So Moshe Rabbeinu, who's the one that knows how to speak to the soul of Klal Yisrael, what happens when he speaks to us? We give forth a beautiful fragrance because the soul wants to be doing the right thing. When we give that moral guidance, it should be in the way of Moshe Rabbeinu. Al Maisa Egel. That Moshe Rabbeinu, he had a couple good words with us. If you guys didn't remember or notice, it was called the golden calf. We got a little bit out of line. Now, by the way, it was the Erev Rav that was pushing the whole thing, but they schlepped in some of the other good chevra, Nebuch. And Moshe Rabbeinu came down and said, Mil Hashem Elai, and got some stuff going. And with all the Levium, they made some moves. And Moshe Rabbeinu had to call us out, had to say it's not right, it's not good, it's not good. But what happened? If Moshe Rabbeinu came and told us all the things we're doing wrong, shouldn't that have stirred up all of our stinky qualities, and we would have been on a lower level, like we mentioned before? To the contrary, Adrabah. When Moshe Rabbeinu came to speak to us, it gave us a beautiful fragrance. The Bechinas, like it says about Klal Yisrael in the Song of Songs and Shir Shirim, Nirdi Nasan Reichai, that the Nerd, the beautiful fragrant Nerd, gives forth its fragrance. It's specifically talking after Moshe Rabbeinu came and told us, you guys are not doing what you should be doing. Then all of a sudden that voice entered into us and we started to emit a beautiful fragrance. After we heard the voice of Moshe Rabbeinu, specifically the voice of rebuke. Hanema al maisa egel, ozav loy nema elanosan. Not that we left our good smell, we started giving it forth. We started, after he spoke to us, we started emitting this beautiful fragrance because he was tapping right into the neshama. When he gave us those words, his voice pierced right into us. That's why when a big tzaddik sometimes tells you to do something, and like, you feel it. Oh my, it's so empowering. You walk out of there like on fire. If some guy like from, your minion is just like, you're davening too loud, so you don't necessarily feel so good. Or, you're annoying me. Or, you see this one? Guy's shuffling. He's making this noise. His button is just keeps saying click, click, or in the chair, squeak, squeak. Those chairs are always squeaky and the guys really squeak. He doesn't even notice. You're like, bro, you're a squeaky chair. You think it's the other guys squeaking, and it's, Mom, you were squeaking your chair. And the guys are like, bro, you're squeaking the chair. So that doesn't go very well. But sometimes you go to a tzaddik, and he just says something to you, and he pierces right into you. He says, you don't mess around with something. And he calls you and it hits you, and all of a sudden your mamish feels so good. It feels so good. It's a big thing to go to tzaddikim and ask them, what should I do, Rebbe? Just tell me what I'm messing up on. Hook me up. Give me toichacha. It takes a certain mature person to go and say, give me moral guidance. It's a big thing. We're going to talk more about this, what a person's mission in this world is and how to find it. And one of the ways is being open to the tzaddik's guidance of telling you what you're messing up on. Because he doesn't have like an agenda. He's not trying to just belittle you, God forbid. He's trying to give that voice of reason to pierce into the neshama that can awaken the beautiful fragrance and let you become more attached to who you really are, which is not somebody that wants to bother people. So Moshe Rabbeinu has this power to do this. And all the tzaddikim, and of course Moshe is connected to, like we said, Ma Shahaya, Hu Sheyeh, the one that was, the Redeemer of Israel, he will be. Ma Shehaya, who is an acronym Moshe, like we mentioned before, that Moshe is the Moshiach of Tiferes. And the Toichacha Shel Moshe L'maisa Egel Hoisef V'Nosem Bem Reach Toiv Shehu Bechines Mezoyne De Nishmasa. What a beautiful line. That the beautiful fragrance is the food of the soul. It's the food of the soul. That's what we said, Kol HaNeshama, don't read it, Neshama El Neshima, the breathing in of those beautiful fragrance, just like the Neshama, we said it was blown into our nose. The secrets of Mashiach are all wrapped up with the smell, with the nose, with Adar, with Chanukah, with Teichacha, with purity, with Das, with Yira. Now look down a couple lines. Vehatikun. And the way to fix all of the things that we're doing wrong, and the way to really connect to who we really are. Nathan's going to drop something big right now. Hu ali de bechinas kol. If you want to fix yourself, you need to have something called kol. Kol means the voice. We just said in last week's parsha, kol kol Yaakov v'yadayim yedei Esav. The power of Yaakov, the power of Yisrael is in the voice. Like Chazal say, ein koichem ela bepiv. That the power of the Jew is in his mouth. And Moshiach, in many places we know, will fight all the wars without lifting a single weapon. He'll fight it all with the words of prayer, with the power and the words of lifting people up through encouraging words, through positivity. The power of the mouth, the koicham bepiv. So this whole fixing is going to come through the kol, and that was the power of Yaakov. Like the Torah gives the accolade to Yaakov that he was the one of the voice. Esav was the one of his hand, he was the hunter, but Yaakov was the one who had a voice. The one who sat in the tents learning Torah and davening. Ki bechinas kol hu mashke esagan. Okay, he's getting a little bit Kabbalistic here. And let's dive in a little bit. The voice is the idea of that which waters the garden. There's a garden, and if you want to have a beautiful garden, everybody knows you better have something to water the garden, otherwise the garden will dry up. Of course, the garden here, we're talking about your neshama, and there's a garden that needs to be watered. How do I water that garden? And of course, the garden, once it's watered, you ever been to beautiful botanical gardens? In Hawaii, when I was living there, wow, we had chocolate trees everywhere and durian. If you guys have ever seen what a durian is, unbelievable stuff. Hashem made a durian. These huge, massive, spiky things. They exist in Thailand. People actually die every year, Hashem Yirachim, and they're very stinky. They just stink. However, some people love the smell of it. It's basically a mix between vanilla ice cream, pudding, and fried onions all together. It's an interesting fruit. So we had durian trees, we had avocado, noni fruit, this garden, bees, and you go into the garden, the beautiful garden. It's amazing, it's so beautiful, so beautiful. It's amazing. When you water the garden, all of the fragrances, all the fruits come out. So how do you water the gardens of your soul? It's called the kol. It's called the kol. Kol is, of course, the gematria 130, without the vav. The gematria Sinai. That's the kol. That's the voice of Sinai. That's the voice of the ladder, the sulam, this week's parsha, of the ladder of Jacob, the voice that goes all the way up, comes from heaven all the way down to come into the neshama. So that kol is mashke sagan. Shesham gedelim kol harechos v'hayirois. Because in this garden grows all pleasant fragrances and all fears, good fear, healthy fear, not fallen fear, fear of the boogeyman and stuff like that, fear of my boss. Those are fears that have become what's called nefula. We'll talk about this more in the Tanya. Fears that have fallen from their grace. There's healthy love. That's the love that you have for your wife. That's the love that you have to your kids. That's the love that you feel for God. And then there's love that's fallen love. Like a person who loves forbidden things. He's addicted, he loves gambling. He loves just smoking, his bong all the time. He just loves that. So that's fallen love. There's love that goes in the right way, and then love that's fallen. And we want to restore fallen love, restore fallen fear. A guy says, I love fish. No, you don't. If you loved it, you wouldn't kill it and eat it. You might like eating fish, might make your gains feel good. You don't love fish. You love your wife. You love your kids. You love God. Fish, yeah. I love fish. Bebechinas v'nar yotzim Eden, and there's a river that comes out from Eden, lahashkais esagan, to water the garden. There's this river coming out of this place called Eden to water the garden. What's this? What's the water? The water is called the kol. There's a place called Eden, by the way. Eden is a very, very high place. The highest, very deep place. It's a very exalted place. And if you want to draw that place and arouse your neshama to give forth the good fragrance, you need something called the kol, the voice. This is not just any voice, this is the voice of the tzaddik. This is a good voice. And once that voice comes, it's like a river that comes down and waters your garden. Like it says in the creation story. V'nahar hayotze me'eden. Zeh b'chinas kol. This is called the voice. This voice that's coming out of Eden is going to water the garden. B'chinas nasei naharais kolam. Like King David says, that the rivers have a voice. If anyone's ever been sat by the Colorado River, or just sat by a river, it's... I used to do a lot of canoeing and like extreme kayaking and stuff like that, like on these whitewater. So hanging out with like these real, extreme dudes who were more sensitive, they would talk like, yeah, we know the voice of the river. And they're like, the river is calling us. And there's this, surfers have this also, the waves are calling. I could hear them, they're speaking to me. So, okay, there's part of that which is idol worship, and there's part of that which is actually there's a voice there. The Gemara says you can hear that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai knew the sound of the voice of the palm trees. That there's a voice to everything in creation. Perek Shira, there's these voices. So the river has a certain kol. There's a voice to that river, and that river is coming from Eden, and it's going to come into the garden, which is your neshama, to make all of the pleasant things sprout forth. See, this is a bit Kabbalistic and high, some of these ideas. So you have to hear the idea, and then you start to allow it to sink in. Sometimes Rav Nachman will say things that are high, and then you allow it, you process it, and then you start walking around with it. Okay, the voice is coming out of Eden, and it's starting to nourish my garden. That's going to bring forth the beautiful fragrance of my neshama. And that's the call of the tzaddik. And when I hear it, the river goes in, and it impregnates, so to speak, and it plants all the good things that can now allow it to flourish, all the sweet-smelling fragrances that is my neshama. Zeh bechinas es koilcha shamati began va'ira. Like Adam said, and Hashem, I heard your voice, your kol in the garden, and I became afraid. Because when the kol comes in, healthy fear can become realized. When you hear that, when you go to the tzaddik and he says something, it can wake you up to something.
So this was the tochacha that he heard?
Yeah. Yeah.
Gotcha.
It's the tochacha, which is going to bring the yira, and the tochacha at the same time is going to bring the sweet fragrance. Ki zeh hakol mashkes agan, because this is the kol that's watering the garden. She'ali dezeh gedelim sham kol harechos, and in that place all the sweet smelling things grow forth and burst forth. Shehem bechinas yira kanir la'el, like we said. V'zeh bechinas mezayin and nishmas, and this is now the true sustenance for my neshama kanir la'el. Ki ali dezeh akol nichna bechinas okev the sitra afra, and when this voice goes out, instead of giving power to the dark side, the heel of the dark side, the voice of reason, the voice of the tzaddik is like Yaakov grabbing onto the heel of Esav and holding him back and saying, you will not go and destroy the world. You're pulling the energy back to the good side. When you hear the voice of the good side, you're reclaiming that power from Esav. Like Torah gives testimony that how do you know when the good side is up? That Esav is down. That when you can pull down Esav, that means that the voice of Yaakov will be up. The more you have the voice of Yaakov, the more Esav will be down, and God forbid the opposite. This voice is the tzaddik, the one who can truly give the right moral guidance. When Raise up your voice like a shofar. V'haged la'ami pishim. You have to tell the nation of the things that they're not doing right. What is the idea of this shofar? The voice of the shofar. We will finish this Torah tomorrow with essentially the 72 names, 72 string song, the mystical instrument of the times of Moshiach with 72 strings. It's all related to the name of God, Yud and Hey, Navav and Hey. That will be continued tomorrow, hopefully in the Moshiach Tzidkenu. Amen. Amen.